Next speaker, Ashleigh Gardner. So as Deputy General Manager of Wattpad Studios Publishing, Ashleigh Gardner works with Wattpad writers and publishers around the world to turn Wattpad stories into books. Leveraging the data and insights from more than 500 million story uploads on Wattpad, Ashleigh creates meaningful promotional and editorial relationships with the publishing industry, helping publishers everywhere find exciting new voices and transform their business with data-driven decision-making. Ashleigh has spent her entire career at the forefront of technology and publishing. Before joining Wattpad, she was Director of Content Management at Kobo, where she focused on expanding Kobo's existing catalog while developing new ebook stores in the international markets. Prior to Kobo, she was Manager of Digital Development at Dundurn Press. Ashleigh graduated from York University with a philosophy and law degree. Let's give it up for Ashleigh.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone for coming to this one today. I know there was a lot of great sessions on at the same time that I'm having some FOMO about right now too. And I'm really excited to be back here. One thing that I did just want to say is that this is my 10th Tech Forum now coming, and it's also 10 years that I've been working in publishing. So I'm excited to talk about what we've been doing at Wattpad and how we're working with data and how that is surfacing more diverse stories for us as well. So one of the things that is new since we wrote the session description, which was private at the time, is that Wattpad recently announced our own publishing division at the end of January. And what we are trying to do is use the huge amount of content that we have and use a lot of the data that we're able to collect on our users to create our own list and to begin publishing our own stories. I think we have a massive library of content and a large audience, and what we're doing is trying to help connect those two now through traditional retail chains as well. And when we announced, and a lot of the conversations that I've had since, I feel like a conversation that comes up a lot is how you really solve diversity is by hiring people and paying them to do the work, and I 100% agree. I think this is in addition to that. I think similar to what we were hearing this morning, it's also really important for us to look at what systems we're using and what's in place and what biases might be introduced through things like data, and that's a bit of what we're going to be talking about today. So what we think about when we're using data and how we look at that as a company at Wattpad, and then at the end, how that leads into Wattpad books. So I'm really excited to tell you all about that today and to hear some of your questions at the end as well. So I hope that a lot of you are familiar with Wattpad. How many of you are, just out of curiosity in the room? Is everyone, okay, that's great. It feels like it gets better every year, coming here and talking about what we've been doing for the past few years. When I've been here at this conference, I feel like we've been more publishing adjacent. We're doing something that publishers are interested in, but isn't quite the same. So excited to be here talking about us now as a publisher as well. So Wattpad has been around since 2006 now. It was originally started as an app to write and share stories for Razr flip phones, if any of you remember those. It was my first phone as well, the pink one. But it's really evolved, and users can upload their stories. They come to us from all around the world to do that. Today, we have over 70 million monthly users from all around the world that are coming to Wattpad to write and share stories. So far, they've shared, as mentioned in the beginning, over 500 million stories. We can't possibly read all of those stories, so we rely a lot on data to be able to tell us what's interesting in our community. And we look at a lot of different signals, whether that's data on our audiences and what they're reading, as well as some machine learning that looks at natural language and surfaces what they think stories are about to help us find those. We have thousands of subgenres. Our users are able to tag their stories, so they can self-define what their topics are. It's not limited to BISAC codes or what's on a bookshelf. How we tend to position ourselves is that we're not just a publishing platform. For so many people, it is social media, for the same reason that people use sites like Instagram or what YouTube is for video. That's what Wattpad is for fictional storytelling. So for a lot of our users, they are writing, they're grabbing an audience, they're looking to move into a more traditional publishing audience, but for a lot of them they're not, and that's fine too. There are lots of paths for writers on Wattpad. Megan's here from Wattpad Next, which is our new system that allows writers to charge by the chapter, and we're seeing different types of stories do well in different channels. We want to be able to encourage writers to pursue whatever they'd like to on Wattpad, whether that is building an audience, being internet famous, writing a book, turning it into a movie, or charging for it on Wattpad as well. So today we're available in over 50 different languages. Our audience is coming to us from all around the world. on any given month, there's 4 million people that actively write and are uploading stories. And as you can see here, that's the uploaded chapters per day is 520,000 as well. So anything on Wattpad, when we refer to our 500 million stories, that's anything from a poem that someone might have written as their very first story ever, all the way up to an entire, sometimes longer than a book. We have some million-word soap opera style books that are updated almost daily. And I think when we do have that massive library, it is really important to us in looking at how we're able to surface stories, how we're able to do that for diverse communities around the world. As a business, we have partnerships in the Philippines, in South Korea, and how we're able to help provide them with the right stories that are going to resonate with their audience. And this is just globally where so many of our users are coming from today. You'll see here the US is our biggest market. Canada is also really strong for us at over 1 million. These are some of the highlights. There are, of course, much smaller audiences across different countries. Indonesia is especially interesting to flag. It's now the second biggest market that we have at Wattpad, whereas last year it was probably not even in the top 5. It's growing extremely quickly for us there. And in each of these countries, this isn't just one community that we have either. We're very aware of the different sub-communities overlapping at Wattpad that are interested in different types of content. And this is a quote from our CEO and co-founder, Alan Lau, who is very outspoken about the fact that here in Toronto is one of the best places to be able to build a company to serve such a global audience. I think that it's been a fantastic place that any type of skills that we need, from creatives to artificial intelligence, engineers, we're able to find that talent in Toronto from a wide variety of different backgrounds. Any type of language skills we need, we're able to hire for right here. So while we're a global company, we are all based in Toronto, and it is really important to us that our audience, or that our staff, resembles our audience and can understand our audience. We do spend a lot of time as a company focusing on D&I initiatives, or diversity inclusion initiatives, to make sure that we are not only attracting the right people, but supporting them when they come in. This isn't just something that is left to HR. I think for all of our departments, we're looking at how we can better look at what biases we might have and how we can help encourage more diverse writers, more diverse staff. As a tech company, we have different diversity challenges sometimes than publishers. The female to male ratio, for example, is much more challenging in tech and engineers. And it's something that we spend a lot of time measuring as well. So Wattpad is one of the only tech companies in Toronto that does publicly report on our diversity stats. We do a big engagement survey every year as well of how our staff feels about working there. We set goals as well to improve each year. I think of note, our leadership team is 50% women and 50% people of color. Our product team is 80% women, which is quite unheard of within the tech community, but it's also something that's important in how we serve our own community. We have a predominantly female audience, and we want to make sure that the people that are building products for them and making decisions for them understand what they're coming to Wattpad for and how they're going to use it. Some of the things that we've done as well that are more as a tech company to help attract a more diverse audience is looking beyond the things that typical tech companies will offer, like free snacks, free dinner, foosball table, things that appeal to young undergraduate men that are looking for a tech job. These are a few of the things we do. I think flex hours are something that are really encouraged. A lot of people in our company are young parents and frequently will leave at 3 to pick up their kids and sign on later. That is not uncommon. We have a parental leave top-up and encourage people of both genders that are making decisions about their family to take the time off. And then subsidized transit passes, I think that's something that's especially important because Toronto is one of the most expensive cities in Canada to live. So making sure that people don't have to be there to be able to come to work or that being a decision. I think something that isn't on this slide that I would also flag, being that it's a publishing audience, is that we only have paid internships. I think that's extremely important in attracting people to come and work for you. Thank you. I'm surprised that there are places that don't now. I feel like there are a lot of great companies in Toronto. I know Kobo only has paid internships. BookNet Canada has great paid internships. And I think to expect people to live in Toronto and work for free for 6 months to a year or for an honorarium, that's really changes the dynamics of who is entering the industry and something that we should all be looking at more. And for us, I think when we look at the data side of Wattpad and how we're looking at data, it's important that the people that are working at the company are the ones making this decision. I think when we talk about choosing books based on data, we want to make sure we're not introducing more problems or introducing more biases into these algorithms. And we have a huge diverse set of stories online, diverse readers and writers, a diverse company, and I think that all goes into our decision making as well about this. We are a data-driven organization, so looking at that particular aspect of Wattpad is more about what I'm going to be talking about here. And machine learning is only as good as the data set that it starts out with. Whatever you are training it on is what it's going to look for and put out. So I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the case, the situation that Amazon had with their resume screening last year. Just to quickly explain it for people that aren't, Amazon had introduced an AI bot to screen for qualified candidates, and the data set that they trained it on was all of their existing staff. And their existing staff was predominantly men, and it would actively filter out women, particularly if they'd had words in their resumes like women's studies. Because no one at the company had that experience, it was considered a negative in their machine learning algorithm. So I think when we do look at things, we want to make sure that what we are telling the machine we want more of is accurately reflecting what we want it to show us at the end as well. So when we are training our machine learning, we really wanted to show it a diverse set of stories of what our community was reading. I think an example of what we didn't just want it to do is if we were to train it on just the classics or the Western canon, it's going to look for things that are more similar to that and say, here are your best stories that you should look at. And that was not reflective of the type of stories we had on Wattpad. I think what we had started to do was looked at previous years' Wattie winners. Wattpad has been hosting contests with hundreds of winners for the last few years. We looked at stories that we'd featured, stories that were popular across different communities, as well as across different languages. We don't want to teach our algorithms that only English stories are good. So that was something that was really important to us as well. So in addition to things that it's looking at from a linguistic way of what types of stories are, what are the topics that are being written about is another thing of where we can introduce more bias into the machine of thinking, oh, well, there hasn't been a story that's been labeled good about this specific subject. That's something that we're constantly aware of. And this is not something that we built and is finished. It's something that we're continually adding to, we're continually looking at. We're asking the questions of why aren't certain titles resonating? And we're not only looking at things on a story basis, we're trying to look at a lot of different aspects of things as well. So it's not just about the content. Contrary to my slide before, it's not just the robot emoji that is saying, here are all of your good stories. I think we're looking at a lot of different lists and we're comparing across different ones, seeing which stories come up in different places. And of course, there also are humans at the other end of this as well that are looking at things and looking for different trends and content. So we're very lucky at Wattpad that we have a wealth of data points. We're able to look at what people are doing, what people are reading, what writers are labeling things as. So for reader activity, we can look at not just what is most popular, which is something that we are able to do and see at Wattpad, but we can see how people are differing in centers, metropolitan centers like New York or Toronto compared to people in more rural areas, which often is really interesting to see the difference of taste. Working and publishing and being here, I feel like a lot of people forget that we are not most people, and some of the things that people are gravitating towards or they're choosing are stories that they want to spend their time in are things that an editor might dismiss. So I think that's really important to see what types of trends we're seeing readers want already. For writer activity, we're able to see what stories are being tagged in different ways, how users are labeling their own work, what we're seeing there. And then for story elements, so that's things that are more about the content itself and the language of what's being written about. I think what's important is that we can see things that other publishers can't. We've got a massive pool of a focus group of readers that's telling us every day what they want. We're not just looking at specific stories. I think we're able to see macro trends as well. So in addition to seeing that certain stories pop, we can see that there are huge trends that our users are gravitating towards as well. And again, here's just a few of the things we're looking at: storytelling, sentiment, readership, elements, and social cues here. So to tell you a bit about some of the macro trends that we're seeing as well, we're seeing a huge growth in demand for Muslim romance. That's something that we've been seeing for a few years at Wattpad, and it's something that continues to grow. This is something that's seen a 51% of increase in reading time over the last year alone, and it's something that I think is especially interesting is that the uploads are still small, which is why it's even more impressive that there's such large reading time. This is something that people are looking for, and I think they're coming to Wattpad to find it because they're not finding it in the traditional industry. And this is one where I know a lot of publishers are being more data-driven as well, but in conversations with them about the subject for a while, comp titles are still so important. And if there isn't a comp title that has done well, it's something that no one wants to take a risk on. And I think this is one to really ask ourselves, if there isn't enough of this in the market, how do we properly measure it and decide? And it might be one where comp titles aren't a valid data point in an issue like this. There's one particular story called Glory of the Midnight Sun that has close to 200,000 reads right now on Wattpad that is one that we're really excited about seeing as well. We're also seeing a huge surge in LGBTQ content. These are a few of the tags that we're seeing associated with that really stand out. Readers spent more than 13 million minutes in 2017, and that's grown, as you can see, to 32 million minutes this past year. It's something that our users continues to grow in our community, and we tend to see it across all of our genres, of course. I think that's a given. That's something that I'm going to keep talking about, but often we tend to see, when we're looking at the traditional industry, that's only considered in the way of like issue-driven books, and we're not seeing it across all genres and all different types of commercial content as well. We're also seeing a huge surge in stories for writers of color, and it's really interesting to see how different users are tagging their works and how we're seeing different readers collect around that. This is something that's also up 41% from 17 in both uploads and reading time. And again, this is one that, of course, that's across all genres. This isn't something that's just happening. It's not just in one genre or issue-driven storytelling. And then strong women and female characters is something that's very important to our audience. Wattpad's audience is about 80% female. I don't think that's surprising as far as who primary book consumers are, or especially young people that love to read. And it's really great to see what young women are writing for each other on Wattpad, where they're not writing to impress a publisher or to try to attract an agent. In a lot of cases, people that are joining Wattpad are just writing what they want to share with their friends or family, or they're writing the stories that they wish they could see out there. Even in more simple examples, one of our most popular stories on Wattpad was a story called The Kissing Booth by an author called Beth Riekels. And she was just frustrated that she wasn't seeing stories that reflected her own life as a teenager. She was seeing lots of fantasy stories. She was seeing stories like Gossip Girl that were, a little bit too racy and didn't reflect her and her friends, or she was seeing things that were a little bit too innocent. She often felt the stories that were being pushed on her by librarians or by school were things that they had deemed safe. And so I think when you see how teenagers are writing about themselves in their life, I think that's something that we don't often see reflected in the traditional industry either. So for us, when we talk about why this data matters, I think it's important to say that Wattpad users are not a different user as book buyers. In fact, most of the people that are using Wattpad, it's because they're voracious readers and because they love books. And this year we undertook a book buying survey to really poll our users on how they're spending their money, what types of stories they're buying, how they're purchasing, and what types of formats they like. So they do regularly purchase books. 81% of Wattpad users have spent money on books in the last 6 months. As you can see here as well, 60% of Wattpad users bought one book, and nearly 1 in 5 claim to have bought 6 books. They're spending significant money, and they do have disposable income. 1/3 of Wattpadders spent more than $150 on books in the last 6 months. So this is something that is important to our users, and I think something that's especially exciting for us to see as we're moving into publishing our own titles as well, is that because they've read something for free on Wattpad doesn't mean they're not going to buy the book. Nearly half of people said that they would buy a book after reading it on Wattpad, and this is something that we've seen from the books that we publish as well. At Wattpad, we've been working with publishers for over the past 5 years to publish titles with them. We've published almost 1,000 books globally. A huge amount of those have been in Southeast Asia with partners there. And we've seen 3 New York Times bestsellers here in North America. I think the fact that we're able to bring stories that have a built-in audience is something that's a big advantage in being able to sell those titles. And we're able to see what users are reading. We can reach them where they are on the platform. And it's not a deterrent that they've read the book already on Wattpad. Often for them, they don't feel like they've just consumed a book. They feel a lot of ownership over the whole project on Wattpad. They've often read it chapter by chapter. They've helped influence it. They feel like the writers are their friend and that this is something that they were a part of, not that they were just consuming. So it is something that we definitely pay attention to, and it is something that they almost want the trophy at the end. They can't Instagram what they've seen on Wattpad. So this leads us to our announcement that we are going to start publishing our own books. After years of working with publishers and setting up titles with them, we've invested in starting to acquire our own titles. Our first list of 6 is going to premiere this August, with 20 coming the next year in 2020. So we've been busy doing lots of acquisitions, and we've been spending a lot of time looking at different reports, as we mentioned earlier, to try to find the stories that were resonating with audiences and that reflected what we were seeing readers really wanted on Wattpad. So for our first list, these are our first 6 titles, just to show you them briefly on the side there. We have some paranormal romance. We have a fantastic fantasy story called I'm a Gay Wizard that is a really fun Harry Potter-esque story, but deals with some very serious issues as well. A story called Trapeze about a teen girl that is readjusting to normal life after leaving the circus. What Happened That Night, which is a great Gone Girl-esque thriller, but also deals very sensitively with sexual assault. Saving Everest is a story about mental illness and dealing with an attempted suicide. But what I really liked about it as well is that it doesn't solve everything with a manic pixie dream girl. It is, there is responsible medical attention and talking about things as well. And the QB Bad Boys and Me, I think one of our biggest trends at Wattpad across all genres and all of the diversity is still bad boys. So that is our bad boy story this time. And I think it's something that we're constantly looking at. What are those trends that we're seeing emerge and rise to the top? What are those different tags that we're seeing users are wanting? I think there's a lot of content that we're seeing on Wattpad, and we're really seeing it thrive because it's being ignored by the traditional industry. We have a huge amount of Latinx content, particularly in the US audience, because I think that's not being found in bookstores. In Canada, we're seeing a huge rise in Muslim fiction, particularly across teen fiction and romance. I think that's something that people are coming to Wattpad for because they can't find it in other places. And in a lot of the countries that we're in, we see these trends start to change, and we see users that are writing stories that they wouldn't necessarily fit on a bookshelf. Does anyone have any questions?
What do you do about hate literature?
We have a zero tolerance policy against that. We take things down extremely quickly. We've got a huge trust and safety and ambassador team. I think even outside of just content, comments are something that we take really seriously as well. And I'd encourage you, if you look at the comments on Wattpad, they are not like the other places on the internet or other social networks. It's something that I think because our audience has done such a good job of policing that, and we give a lot of power to writers themselves to moderate their own comment section. We don't treat things like Goodreads in that the comments are the product itself. For us, it's about making it a safe place for writers. So if they can delete any comments that they want. They can block any users that they want from being able to comment on their stories as well.
Thank you. What pricing strategies are you using for the fall list? Is it based on what the traditional market is pricing at, or I guess what Wattpad users want to pay?
Yeah. So that's a great question. They are pretty traditionally priced for the list, at least as far as the physical versions of the books go. All of the books will also be available, though, on Wattpad as Wattpad Next, which does have our own virtual currency that users can buy books for, both by paying by the chapter and purchasing those coins through the App Store.
Hi, to take it back to the kind of machine learning that you were talking about, and you're kind of saying how you're teaching that algorithm to surface the type of books that are resonating across different groups and with different readers. Is that also surfacing different themes or kind of more subjective about the content of what those books are about, or, you know, when we're thinking of diversity in that way as well?
Yeah, I think we're able to see the types of themes that users are including in their stories. And outside of what's been tagged, we're able to make guesses about what the stories are about based on the language. That is something that, we're continuing to get better at, but it is surfacing more subtle trends as well. Like, it's not just large scale themes that we mentioned before. One of my favorite ones that I'm seeing right now, particularly in Spanish for some reason, is people are tagging stories with the tag goodbyes. And when we looked at that, it was users that were writing romance stories, teen romance usually, about the type of relationships that don't work out. So not that they're horrible experiences or bad stories, it's just, your boyfriend in grade 12 that you realized you weren't going to be together forever. So there are these really interesting little subgenres that are starting to surface on Wattpad as well.
Given the age range of your core audience on Wattpad, how are you anticipating marketing these books offline? Is it going to be to a teen YA audience? And especially when you have crossover genres, when it doesn't fit as neatly into the boxes that traditional publishing has, because it's based on what you know of Wattpad.
Yeah.
How does that translate?
That's a great question. And I think we're still in the phase where a lot of our marketing plans are being finalized, but knowing that our users are spending a lot of their time online, that is where a lot of our marketing does lean to. When we are talking to our users, things like digital influencers and hearing about a book on places like YouTube are things that they rank as the highest factors of what causes them to purchase a book. And knowing the age demographic and those other trends we're seeing as well off Wattpad, we're seeing that among users as well. So digital and influencer strategy is a big part of what we're doing now. We're also really lucky at Wattpad that so many of our own users are also influencers themselves. We have a lot of booktubers that have their own Wattpad accounts, other things like that, that makes it easier for us to reach them and have that established relationship.
Hi, and I'm from Brazil, and there is this big fan base there for Wattpad. And another website, there is a Portuguese version, but since you don't have a team there is this community called Wattpadders, something like this, and they do a lot of marketing work for you, for the company, I mean. So how do you work with that? Do you guys train them to give information to the public? Is it just they just Google everything and spread the word? How does this work?
Yeah, so we have a lot of ambassadors from all over the world that speak different languages, and we have paid ambassadors as well. There are ways that people can volunteer as users, but we also have people that are paid to help us moderate those communities, and then people in our headquarters as well that take on a bigger role in growing our communities all over the world. So usually anything that's happening at Wattpad from a corporate level, we would disseminate to our different communities around the world and give that information to ambassadors and to our content specialists there. I see. Sorry, Katie's there. If she had anything else to say on the marketing side. Did I answer the marketing question? Okay, I didn't see you behind.
Our audience are not Amazon buyers, so they really prefer to go into stores and, sort of browse around, and it's sort of I guess they get lucky and they find a book that they want to read. So that's one thing that we're also going to be leveraging, is just trying to make sure that, our co-op plans are in place so that they really can come into an Indigo or an independent bookstore and they can find the books that they're interested in.
So moving into somewhere like Indigo, how do you adjust from your tags on site to BISAC, since that's going to deeply affect how the buyers look at things?
Absolutely. I think we're doing our best to match things up, which can be a challenge sometimes as well. But I think that we're talking to our partners on the distribution side of where to best tag those titles, and then doing what we can as well to educate our users about where they're able to find the books. I think something just to follow on what Katie said too is that our users are preferring big box stores like Indigo, but we also hear from a lot of our users that in some cases they don't live near a Barnes & Noble or an Indigo in North America. We actually see our books over-index in places like Target, which I think are often in cities and towns that can be more accessible where they might not have that big box bookstore. Thank you.